Welcome to the show, everybody. We're your hosts, Ryan
and Brittany,
and we have another special episode for you today. We've got a guest on. Bex, are you there? Are you with us?
Sure am.
Bex, do you want to talk a little bit about your work? We kind of want it to be a surprise for the people because before I let you introduce yourself, when I tell people who you are and what you do, they're like, I never knew that even existed. And I'm like,
Yep.
Yeah, isn't that fucking cool?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that amazing? Don't you wish you had that as a resource when you needed it? So can you talk a little bit about your work as a doula and then also your business, Grieving Grief? I'm going to butcher it, I think, if I attempt.
Yeah, sure. So I became an end-of-life doula about a year ago. I had a friend actually who did a course and thought it was really interesting. And so I signed up for it. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but my dad died of liver cancer 10 years ago. And so grief was always sort of this thing that kind of followed me around. And I, after he died, I was like, oh, I really want to get a public health degree so that I can help people live healthy lives. That was like my goal, was to help people basically not have the same, outcome that he did, which is silly because we all die. But recently I've been like, I really want people to have good deaths, whatever that means for them. So for doulas, that's kind of what we do. We companion the dying person. We're companion for them. If someone is terminally ill and they have hospice there and their family members, like everyone kind of has an agenda or is really connected to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about doulas is like, we're an objective person who's there to support the dying person.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of that work right now with hospice. I volunteer for hospice in the area, and just kind of sit and talk to the person about their life and what they, reflect on those things and also support them in those emotional needs. And then sort of, you mentioned Grieving Grief. That's my other sort of side project. So after my dad died, I really wanted something to be normal for once because everything was like totally flipped upside down. And so for his birthday, I was like, you know what? It's his birthday. I'm going to get him a birthday card. That's what I'm going to do. And so I went to, I don't know, Target or something, and remember looking through all of the cards and feeling like I had this secret. I was like, I'm getting a birthday card, but this person is dead. It's like, felt like a little dirty secret. But I really never felt like the cards, they're all for living people. And they're like, you're the best dad. And like, happy birthday. So glad to celebrate with you. But I kept doing it. So I wrote him a card every day for the last, it was 8 years. And then last year I created Grieving Grief. So Grieving Grief makes cards for holidays and birthdays and anniversaries and life events that you would write to someone who is not living. And, it's sort of based on therapeutic practice of writing unsent letters and sort of, writing a letter and tucking it into your desk or something like that. But it's sort of for a specific purpose and a, specific reason. So yeah, that's me in however long that took to say.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. You got the intro down.
Yeah. You know yourself so well.
Don't ask me about my other feelings, though. My other feelings I'm really connected to.
I mean, I think that's such a, first of all, it's a very I'm gonna, you know how I get with the words and the vocabulary, but I think like the ability to sort of tap into that, that there really isn't a market, for people who still want to have these ongoing connections with their loved ones. I think that, for me, so Bex, you mentioned that your dad died 10 years ago. My mom died about, and this isn't me being bad at math, even though I am bad at math. This is
like 6 years?
Yeah, I think it's like 6 years. It's always difficult for me to remember because it feels like, it always feels like it just happened, and like simultaneously it happened
A long
forever
time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was never like a letter writer, but I do often talk to her in the various forms that I see her in like nature and things and memories and stuff like that. But I think the idea of having something that, can express, maybe something that can express things that maybe you can't even say yourself while you're going through a period of grief is so helpful and a really, really cool idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've talked to a lot of people who, like, I have 3 siblings, and for the 10-year anniversary, I sort of offered it up to them. I was like, does anybody want a card? Like, I'm happy to send you them. Mm-hmm. And 2 of my siblings said yes. I have one brother who's sort of not interested in engaging in that, which is fine. Like, I understand this is not going to be for everybody. But then other people access it in a lot of different ways. I have a friend whose grandmother died, and she just spent the card writing memories about her grandmother. And she was like, I want to remember everything so I can come back later and like revisit those memories. And I thought that was so sweet, because you do forget things over time. And it's like, I'm really interested to hear her experience in like 5 years when she comes back and is like, I totally forgot about that thing and it brought me so much joy or whatever.
Yeah.
So I love hearing how people are using it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Britt. I cut you off.
No, you're good. No, I was just gonna say that's cool. I really like that idea. I would definitely be interested in that, because I do write letters to people, living mm-hmm. and dead, and don't usually send them. So yeah, like sending a card is probably less emotionally intense and like kind of probably really good for birthdays, because like you want to still celebrate their life even though they're not here, and it doesn't always have to be like such a negative or like taxing experience. Yeah. And a couple of years ago, I actually went through and read all of the letters, all of the cards that I wrote my dad, and it was really fascinating it was like this really interesting time capsule of my year. It was sort of like, these are all the things I wish I had been able to tell you. Like the year that I got married, I wrote about my wedding. The year that I bought a house, I was like, I really wish my dad was a contractor. So I was like, I really wish you were here so I could just call you and ask about all of these things, because I don't know what I'm doing. So sort of from like my own selfish perspective, I'm like, it's a really interesting way to look at how my grief, like what has stuck out to me and how it has changed over the last decade. And also like this, looking at where you might want support from like somebody else, or, like you don't always realize how someone affects you until they're gone. And kind of looking back at that and realizing like, oh, I never thought I would like really needed you for that kind of stuff. And now mm-hmm. you're gone, and now I really miss that. So yeah, I think that would be really cool.
I actually felt that a lot, Brittany. Like it's now that you like, I think I've sort of discussed it. Discussed D-I-U-S-S-E-D-I-T. Discussed it on the show before, but my mom and I had a very difficult relationship. She was not like a great parent, but after she died, I was able to appreciate things about her that I was not able to appreciate about her when she was living. And my sisters, I created it. I created this motto, of course, but I have this, my sisters also use it. Like whenever I'm in a situation where I don't know like what to do, like Bex, like you were talking about, your dad was a contractor and you were sort of expressing that to his memory, that you wish that he was there to sort of have that advice for you. But so my mom's name was Robin, and when I don't know what to do, my motto is, what would Robin do? Like, what would Jesus do? And I think because she, for all of this woman's flaws, like she could get herself out of anything. Anything. And I like to channel her whenever people are giving me shit. I like it. It feels good. No, I mean,
nice.
Yeah, it feels it honestly does feel like I'm not like a exceptionally like spiritual person, and you know, we can actually talk about what we all think happens after death and all of that. But I do feel like this deep sense of connection when I feel like I'm following through on something that she would like advise me to do, if that makes any sense. Like it feels very much like, yeah, I did the right thing. Like this is definitely what she would have done.
Yeah, I mean that's how we keep these people alive, right? And how we keep their memory going, for better or worse, is like the ways we behave and the things that we do. I love that.
No, definitely.
I don't know if you want to get into this, but do you, since you're, you know, discuss death all the time, do you have thoughts on afterlife? What might happen, if anything?
You know, I used to really think about that a lot, especially right after my dad died. I was like very terrified of death. And I was like, what happens after that? Like, not even just that, but the process of dying. Like, does it hurt? Am I going to feel lonely? Am I going to be scared? Like all these things, which I think has made me, you know, influence my decision to become an end of life doula as well. I don't know. I forget. I'm not going to even try to pretend that I remember which physicist said this, but it's basically like, you know, energy can't be created or destroyed. And so we came from something, and I imagine that we will probably just go back into that somehow.
That's actually exactly how I feel. No, that's exactly how I feel. But I'm pretty sure that was Isaac Newton. But actually, like literally that principle that like energy can't be destroyed. You know, like literally those molecules are here. The energy that their bodies expelled is still here. Like we'll get back to the afterlife, but I personally want a green burial, like specifically for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. My sisters already know. I've let them know exactly what needs to happen. And I know that they'll honor that. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah.
Yeah. I read a book a couple years ago. It's called All the Light We Cannot See. It won a bunch of awards, I think. And it had a really great passage towards the end that sort of compared people who have died to like radio waves of like radio waves are all around us, but we can't necessarily see them or feel them or touch them, but you know, they're there. And so this passage was sort of like just wondering if once people die, they also exist in that way of like always being there, even if we can't see them or feel them or touch them. And I find a lot of comfort in that.
I think what terrifies me most about dying is, I mean, it's probably what the like people who fear death, probably what we all fear is the uncertainty. What I can't fathom is I can't fathom like nothingness, right? And that's what is scary. Like I can't imagine not being conscious. I can't imagine like not existing. Like I die and then just like
Your brain
don't
stuff?
think anymore. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't like. It must like I don't like that's like I cannot wrap my head around that. I don't know if like I'm supposed to be like our living things supposed to be able to understand their mortality that deeply, but it terrifies me the thought of like not having an internal dialogue anymore.
But you won't be aware of the fact that you don't have an internal dialogue, right? So
Yeah, that's so wild to me though, right?
Yeah.
So this is also, you know, I also think that like so I one of the ways I like make myself feel better about it because I am terrified of I mean we'll get back to it. But like one of the things that I've like tried to like sort of think about to make myself feel better about it is like I don't remember, you know, being a fetus, right?
that would be amazing if you did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know at what point.
No. Not the actual remembering, but it would be like you'd be like the first person.
Yeah,
to
no, totally.
know.
Yeah. That'd be some wild shit. No, but, so it's like, you know, well maybe it'll just be like that, right? Like no brain, no thinking.
Right.
No,
I mean, like I can't imagine it, but it also sounds amazing. Like I
No
did
brain
not
sounds
have to think. Yeah, like
Yeah,
just be like a
yeah.
nematode. Like that sounds awesome.
Brittany wants to de-evolve. She wants to go back.
I just want to float. I just don't like less thinking would be great.
My sister, who I've had like instances where I've almost died because I'm like incredibly reckless sometimes. But as far as like a real true near-death experience, I've never had one. My sister had one. And she said she almost drowned. And she said that it was absolutely terrifying right up until it wasn't. Like she described the process of dying. That's essentially what it was. She was like, yeah, she didn't care. Like it was just like a complete lack of care. Like she was just like, all right, yeah, like floating. Like you're saying, like she was floating, Brittany. Like in her both. Well, she wasn't floating in the water. That's why she was dying. But she was floating in her mind. But that was very reassuring when she told me that. When it's just like,
Didn't you say that she like just felt like this warmth come over her, like this comfort? Yeah.
I'm like, I could handle that.
I can get down with that. Yeah.
I could use some of that.
Honestly, my like doula education and training made me so much more comfortable with the idea of death because we talk so much about what people are like at the end of their life. Mm-hmm. And if if you have a death, these types are like people who know they're going to die, right? Like they're really old or they have a terminal illness or something, and they're on like a steady decline. I can't really speak to what it's like to be in a car accident or like some other kind of traumatic death like that. But at least for these people, you know, you're being mostly heavily sedated, which is kind of nice. I'm like, cool. I'm on board with that. But the thing that really sort of warmed my heart is there are lots and lots of reports of people who see visions of their loved ones who have died, like when they're close to dying. And at first you would be like, that's really scary. But everyone has been like, no, there's some, some instances when
like,
it's
do I want to see that person again?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right. Exactly. Like sometimes there's those people, but then there's other, like, it's like, oh wow, it's so comforting to them. And that was it. Yeah. I mean, death is so scary because no one can tell us how to do it, right? Or at least what comes after. Or really, there's people who have been dead for a certain number of like minutes and then come back and have thoughts about that. But no one has ever died completely forever and been able to come back and been like, this is what it's like. This is what you can expect. Yeah. So that's why we're so freaking terrified of it. And we spend our whole lives like writing down our little notebooks. Okay, what am I going to do on Tuesday? What am I going to do on Friday? And it's like, this is the one thing you can't plan.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, you know, like I occasionally, you know, don't shave my legs for months. What if they find me?
Oh,
that gets to me all the time when I think about like if I die, like dying in the shower, like falling down in the shower.
Oh, please don't let me die in my house. That would be so embarrassing. Don't let them come in here.
Pull me
like
outside.
Finding you, like soaking wet.
Like, don't let them see all the Amazon boxes that I tore down but never took out for some reason. Like, don't let them see. Please.
You'll be like crawling on your deathbed, crawling to the door, just to get to the door frame. Like, please don't go in there. It's amazing. Like we think we're gonna be embarrassed after we're dead.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I mean, there's a small. I have to always leave for me. Like I always have to leave room for the possibility of like the supernatural, right? Like I think it's part of it is just like a cultural thing. Like I'm Black, and I, you know, just as part of the diaspora, there is a strong connection to ancestors and being connected to a spiritual world and like practicing things like voodoo and stuff like that. So like I have to leave room for that. And so like, you know, accounting for the possibility that I become a ghost, right? I would be embarrassed. I don't want to be an embarrassed ghost for eternity. Like I can't have that.
Well,
I also let my sisters know that like if I become a ghost, like if I die, I'm like, oh no, okay, yeah, ghosts really are like this shit is real. I'm here. I'm just hanging out. I told them like, you know, I'm gonna come and hang out with you. Like that's how it's been my ghostly eternity is just hanging out with like my family, like forever, just like for generations, just being around. Like Bella Goff. Do either of you play The Sims?
No.
Okay.
Someone out there knows.
Yeah. Ryan, is your unfinished business the Amazon packages that need to be cleaned up in your house? Like, is that why you're still a ghost?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You understand that my life was a little bit together. Like, please don't judge me. I hate the corporate labor exploitation complex. Please don't judge me. And the bottle of uneaten shroomies, like please don't.
Oh my God.
Don't judge me. Nah, I think you know, I think I've told well, my plan, like if I make it to 80, my plan is to on my 80th birthday,
I love this plan.
Is to use cocaine for my 80th birthday. Because
you're gonna wait till 80?
Yeah. Because my thing is like, and people are always that's always people's question. I'm like, if I get a terminal illness, I'm just going to use a bunch of hard fucking drugs because why not? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, why not go out doing just some wild fun shit when I have nothing to lose?
Yeah.
So all of that to say is, you know, the shroomies would be the first thing gone if you found me in here. Like, I'll have a smile on my face at least. That's what I'll do. I'll take some shrooms before I die, so I won't be embarrassed about my home. Perfect. Thanks, Bex. You helped me.
Oh, what if you're stuck in so like you're stuck in whatever clothes or whatever you're wearing when you die or not wearing? Oh my God! What if you're naked? Are you also going to be stuck within whatever like mindset you were in? So like if you died and you were, you know.
I think so. I don't hear. This is another thing I truly believe. I believe that people who are who have time to know that they're dying, like know it. Like people who are like don't die suddenly, you know what I mean? Like I feel like my mom, when she died, she well, you know how like animals when they die, they'll usually like find a corner like by themselves. And I feel like people do very much a similar thing because people are animals too. So, right. So I feel like when my mom was she's a hypochondriac, right? Like, so she would, you know, constantly be in the hospital for like made up illnesses or like illnesses that she kind of brought upon herself through like bad practices or whatever. And she would call us and everybody would get down there just to, you know, to find out it isn't something super major and she didn't need all of her siblings and all of her kids and half of her first cousins to be there. But when she was dying, she didn't call us at all. And I think, you know, that is one of the ways I think that she knew that something was happening. How did I get on that? Sorry.
I think we were talking about like you are stuck in whatever.
Oh, the mindset. Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I think that like I would say
prepare yourself.
No, yeah, or I would say no. That I think that at this, you've got to experience some type of peace at the end. I think, like when my grandmother was dying, my mom's mom, who was not a good mother, not a great person, she apologized to my mom on her deathbed. Not as like a, it's like a she didn't apologize. She didn't say I'm sorry. She said to her, I was really mean to you. And that did so much for my mom to hear that. And so I like to think that at the end, when there's nothing to lose, maybe you get this your brain is able to just have this profound clarity because it's not busy, you know, worried about deception or image or all of that. I think maybe your mind just opens up. What if that, like, I mean, what if death is nirvana? You know, like what if it is higher existence? Like what if we're out in the cosmos? What if we're stardust? I mean, we all are technically stardust, right? Like everything on the planet. I am not high. There you go.
Death being nirvana is like definitely what I hope is the case. That sounds great. Ryan, there are definitely, like, in my education, there are lots of stories about people who do something similar and sort of get things off their chest or just, you know that they are dying and like behave in that way. I think people do really have some sort of like sixth sense for that. My dad, so he was sick for a really long time. He was diagnosed with hepatitis C when I was in middle school. So I was like 13. And then when I was in college, he got liver cancer and he had liver cancer for several years and eventually became metastatic. So it was growing to all areas of his body and including his brain. And so he actually he was doing pretty good, honestly. And then he ended up having a massive stroke. And so he was unconscious basically for about 36 hours. And when we could tell that like he was starting to go, like his breathing had changed. It became like a lot more labored. And so the nurses were kind of like, I think it's going to happen. My whole family wasn't there yet. My brother and sister had like gone home to shower and we had called them and we were like, you better come back. They came back. And then I would say maybe 10 minutes later, we were all sitting around him. And my mom was actually the one who was like, my dad's name was Bill. She was like, Bill, it's okay. Like you can let go. You can go be with your dad, with Uncle Dick and with your mom. And then like, as soon as she said that, he died. It was like insane how like he just needed someone to be like, it's okay, we're going to be okay, you can go,
Yeah.
it's fine. And
Wow.
like he really needed someone to say that, and then he was like, okay, I'm gonna go.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, it sucked, but it was great.
I mean, yeah, it sucks, but it's great that I mean, I feel like
he got what he needed before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone got what they needed in that moment, and it's I very similar experience to yours, Becky, in a way. We were there. I had left to shower. I literally walked into my house, got the phone call, and turned right back around. And she died maybe 10 minutes after I got back. I also have an Uncle Dickie. In case you didn't know, which you didn't.
No, I definitely didn't know. But and there's also people who report the alternative of that, which is like, I was with them for 12 hours and then I left the room to go to the bathroom and I came back and he was dead. And it's like, some people hold on to like be alone because they don't want, we can only speculate about what they're thinking, if anything, but I think people do. They're like, I don't want this person to see me like this, or I don't want them to be here with this, or I want to be alone, or whatever. And you just, it's just experiences all over the board. People, deaths are as unique as people.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few times you have an education in this. Like, how did you find that? What does that look like? Did you have to curate that yourself, or is there like a college for death doulas? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, great question. So end of life doulas or death doulas are like, as they are known now, are sort of just popping up. I think, like, someone sent me an article today about death doulas, so I feel like I see a new article about them every day. That is not to say that people have not been doing this kind of work for a long time. Like, Indigenous communities have been companioning their dying for, centuries and centuries. So it's not like we just invented this thing. It has been happening. But as it relates to like mainstream medicine or like healthcare in America, it's not really something that has been paid attention to as something that can be valuable until lately. So that background is basically like, there's a bunch of like different places that have sort of piecemeal courses. And there's, unlike therapists or something where you get like licensed and you're an LCSW or something, you don't really have to have that to be a doula. Like, Brittany, you could show up at someone's house tomorrow and be like, "Oh, you're dying, I'm a doula." Like, no one's gonna stop you, honestly. There's no like regulatory body. But there was a course through the University of Vermont, which I did, and I think it was only about a month long, and it was just, it wasn't too expensive. I was like, let me just dip my feet in and like dip my toes in and see if this is right. And then there's something called the International End of Life Doula Association, ANELDA for short, and they do like another, I want to say it was like 6 weeks. I'm getting they might be flip-flopped, but and I did it during the pandemic, so it was all virtual. And ANELDA actually does have like a credentialing step, which is after the training, where you like have a supervisor and you can talk to someone and be like, this is the case that I have, and can you tell me how I should have dealt with it and stuff. I'm not quite there yet, but it's, it is sort of piecemeal, and I definitely have to like learn along the way. But I got a virtual certificate.
That's cool. That's something.
Yeah.
No,
how many people how many families have you helped so far?
Just one, really.
Oh, okay.
Because so ideally I would like to, do this on my own, but I was really, the only person I've really been around who is dying is my dad. And so I was sort of like, I need to make sure that I can like be around people who are dying before I like promise to do this. So that's why I signed up to do hospice volunteering, to just sort of get a feel for it. And long story short, I've basically been with this person for about 6-8 months at this point.
Wow.
Which is kind of long for hospice. We can
Yeah.
get into that another time, but but you know, I mean, people reach out to me also for suggestions. Like I had someone reach out to me and say, you know, my aunt is dying. Do you have any resources? Like, how can I support my mom, who is her primary caregiver? So I've gotten like emails like that really help connect me to the work. But you know, Philadelphia has the Philly Death Doula Collective, which has a few different folks who are working in that way. But from what I've heard, it's like there are a lot of people becoming death doulas or end of life doulas, and the need is definitely there. I think people just don't really, well, there's a lot of issues. People might not really understand what they do or why they would hire someone like that. Hospice generally doesn't pay for a doula. So you're paying out of pocket basically for these services. I mean, see capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So I think it could be in the next 10 to 15 years, we see insurances starting to cover doula services, because I think it's following a similar trajectory of like birth doulas.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing a lot more birth doulas be covered by insurance and things like that. So I can see it heading in that direction, especially with the baby boomers all.
It's like having a chaplain come in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I definitely think that I think that, like, to your point, social services in the medical field are very lacking, and that support for people is very, very lacking in medical practices. And you know, maybe doctors should be taking, you know, mandatory courses on that type of thing, and how to connect and integrating these types of resources more, because I do think this could be so like helpful for people, or even just the family as well,
Mm-hmm.
having someone to explain maybe what,
and like an objective person that like doesn't have, you know, emotional investment in the person who's dying. I think that's really important. Yeah,
and there's also, you know, I think there are a lot of things that people really think about when they're at the end of their life, including what I really like about the doula position is that they can do stuff, something called a legacy project. So it's like, how do you want to be remembered, or what do you want to leave behind when you die? And so a legacy project could be like working with someone to record their life story. You know, you could transcribe it or record it on your phone. You could write cards to your grandkids for like their weddings and things like that to like help be remembered. And that's not something that hospice does or social workers do, you know? And so to just be someone who can provide that. And also the other part I really like about doulas is being someone who can just sit with a person in their fear and anxiety over what's happening to them. Because like my dad was a very strong person who never wanted to show any weakness at all, including to his family. Like he was definitely like, I have to take care of my family. And I could see a doula being really helpful and being like, are you scared of dying? And like allowing someone to have space to express those feelings. Because my dad would never say that to me, you know?
Right.
Like, I got to be strong. So, yeah.
That's great. Bray, I don't mean to call you out, but I know you've been dealing with some things lately.
Yeah. I was thinking about, you said in the beginning, this ties into you calling me out. I was thinking about how you said that grief was kind of just following you around. I definitely feel like that. Like, it almost feels like I'm the Grim Reaper sometimes. And people around me are like, no, you're crazy. Like, there's not that many people dying around you. I have a lot of, there's a lot of animals dying around me more than people. And it just like kind of weighs on you. Like, it weighs on me from the, like, now that animal isn't around or that person isn't around or whatever. And now I have to deal with that like everyone else does. But it also is like, why is there so much of this around me? So did you feel like there was grief around you just because of your dad? Like, it just felt like it was everywhere, or was there other stuff going on too?
Great question. So when my dad died, I was 23, and I had a friend in high school whose mom died, but we weren't really in touch at that point. But I didn't really know anybody who had like a significant loss like that. And so I felt like I had this grief, like I was encased in this grief bubble, and nobody could see it, and nobody would ask me about it, and nobody would talk about it. I think my experience now, like 10 years later, would be very different. I think that was definitely based on where I was in my life. But I definitely think I paid more attention to people who were grieving or like had issues like that. I was like, I need to connect with somebody about this. And also, if you're experiencing that, like, you might need to connect to somebody too.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I really felt like it was something that was just, I saw it everywhere, but I definitely, I still think about my dad every day, basically. And that grief is never gone. I'm never at a point where I'm like, okay, that's it, I'm done. I, even now, like, as I'm growing older and I'm like thinking about having a family and all this stuff, my relationship to my dad has changed, even if he's not here. And so yeah, it's just, it feels like this like sidekick that's just kind of, sometimes he's like right next to me and like super aggressive and being like, hey, I'm your grief buddy. And then sometimes he's like sleeping in the corner. But it's always around. I don't know, Ryan, if you feel similarly.
Yeah, no, I think about my mom every day. I talk about her very, very often. I find a lot of comfort and relief actually in talking about my mom, talking about even like my relationship to her. I speak about that very candidly, and talking about that process of grief for me. Like like I said, I did not have a good relationship with her. The last time I saw her was in a very like casual setting. We were just sort of passing each other by in public, and whatever in that moment, because at the time I was no contact with her. But something in that moment made me want to speak to her, and I spoke, and that was my last interaction with her. It was a very pleasant interaction, and the place that I saw her was like a block from my house, and I would have to pass that same spot every single day, like coming home from work, and for a long time. So one of the things that I believe very strongly, and I tell people when they're grieving, is allow yourself to feel all of your emotions fully, except for guilt and shame. Like, that is my advice to people. Like, let yourself be as sad, as angry, as hurt as you need to be. So like, yeah, I would regularly, without shame, stop in my tracks on that corner and cry in public. And I did that for a very long time. Or like I said, was saying earlier, like, just like when I see like, I don't know if they're the names of these things are, but you know those little white moths that are always around in like spring?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my mom told me that those were fairies. And so whenever we were out, she would point one out and be like, make a wish, there's a fairy. And so whenever I see them now, I talk to my mom. I'm like, hey mom, like, because I do truly feel like it's her, like, especially if it's only one of them and they're following me, like, I know it's her. And I just take that moment to have a conversation with this moth, my mom. But and Becky, I'm not like I'm not like a doula or anything, but I get it. It makes me feel better when I can talk about my own experiences with people who are going through that and like helping them through it. Like I had a friend who lost their mom, and it but maybe in like even a slightly selfish way, it just made me feel better to be like, yeah, this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be, don't rush yourself through it. It's going to be forever. Like you're literally going to be grieving forever. And then it's just how it is.
That always amazes me. Like it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Grief, at least this has been my experience. And I think it was kind of getting to what you were getting to, Bex, is that your grief transforms over time as well. It's so, in the beginning, yes, it's lots of crying and confusion and feeling like you're in this very surreal space. But over time, it changes. It changes into sometimes reverence. It changes into whatever it is. But yeah, so yes, Bex, I have experienced the same feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this idea of regrief or regrieving, which is like coming back to a grief at a different point of, or coming back to a loss at a different point of your life and sort of regrieving that experience. And my grandfather died pretty suddenly, very suddenly. He had a heart attack on New Year's Eve, 2001. And he and my grandmother raised me basically. Like I didn't go to daycare. I went to their house. They lived in the same town. I was there all the time. And I remember like being sad about it, but I don't think I could have. I was 13. So there's no way I could have like grasped what that meant for my entire life. Like to have this male figure like raise me and then just be gone.
Yeah.
And I've like really been thinking about him a lot over the last year and being like, this sucks. Like I loved him so much and he just disappeared. And that was really hard for me as a 13-year-old. And so I'm sure that when I'm his age, like he was 75 when he died, when I'm that age, I'm going to think about, hopefully I get there, knock on wood, is, what is my experience of his loss going to be then? So yeah, your perspective of it totally changes with as your life changes.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a lot there could be a lot said about, how much the people in our lives actually affect our behavior and even ideas of ourselves and things like that, and how we define ourselves in proximity to these people. I think I hope that yeah, man. I hope that when people go out, they go out well. I hope that experience of warmth and not caring is a universal experience. And I think that we need more folks like Bex.
For sure.
Access to folks like Bex.
Even knowing that you exist. Like I had no idea. It's really cool.
It's really cool. Thank you so much, Bex.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love talking about death. I love talking about grief. I am fun at parties.
Bex is fun. Bex is fun at happy hours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess that's true. Ryan, I'm just curious. I love that story about the little things on the trees being fairies, but was wondering if you wanted to share like one of the favorite things about your mom.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was the life of the party. That's probably my favorite thing about her. Like she was a good time. If she was there, people would show up, you know. You know, so my mom's dad died when she was very young. She was 9 years old.
Oh.
And she, you know, it was the 60s. Her parents, you know, her mother was exceptionally abusive, and her father was very much a buffer to that. And after he died, things got exponentially worse for her and her siblings. And I think that his death, I've always thought that if he had not died, she would have been a way different person. She would have been a much happier person. But anyway, so I think because her dad, she was so young when her dad died, and he was actually very young. He was only 45. She always had this preoccupation with it. So even when I was very young, I mean, like 5, 6, 7, she would talk about death, and she would talk about what she wanted for her funeral. And so when she died, and all of, you know, me and my sisters came together, we all knew that what she wanted was a party. And so that's what we did. We had like a traditional viewing just for the family, but she didn't even want that. Like we did that, you know, for them. She wanted a party to celebrate her life, and we knocked that shit out of the park. It was, you know, it was an amazing thing. So I think that's probably, I mean, you know, being a life of the party comes with this, you know, it comes with vices and all that. But I think that was definitely, she was fun. She was a good time. Yeah. What about you guys? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. My dad's mom died when he was in his early 20s too. So, I mean, he wasn't 9, but I think there was a lot there that he didn't really ever unpack. But my dad could be really goofy. Like he tried to play it off and was like, I'm this big construction guy and I don't cry and I don't do these things. But he was like so fucking goofy sometimes. And I just really wish that in those moments he had let himself fully like lean into it, you know? But me and my siblings all have like, I think we all have this little goofy side, and it is definitely him. Yeah. And I, you know, my siblings are really a great support for me. We're very close, and I love seeing that in them and thinking of him. It's great.
Oh yeah. Me and my sisters, we love a good time.
Yeah, there you go.
A good time.
Yeah.
Bex, do you want to shout out your socials, let people know where they can access Greeting Grief, where they can access you for your DMs and your services, to pay you money for your services?
Absolutely. I have to make sure I say the right things. So on Instagram, Greeting Grief is just one word, Greeting Grief. So find me there. And if you are interested in doula services, you can email me at beckymastin@gmail.com.
Thanks so much. Reach out to Becky, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody knows a dead person.
That's probably true.
I mean,
it's got to be true, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be. Thank you so much, Bex.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us again. We will not see you in the next one because we cannot see you. I started smoking towards the end, y'all. Thanks. Have a good night.